Hey, welcome to On the Path podcast with Cheryl Nembhard. You know, since I was a kid, I was told my conversations were way too deep. Well, now it's paying off. Join me and the names you know as we go deep into their personal stories of triumph, tragedy, and the lessons they've learned along the way. Friends, this crazy, overwhelming life we live calls for some serious encouragement and inspiration. So grab a cup of coffee and get your notebook because we're going into the classroom of life. So let's get lifted with faith filled conversations. I'll see you on the path.
You're listening to On the Path with Cheryl Nembhard, brought to you by Compassion Canada.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of On the Path. I am so excited to have you with me. We are in the classroom of life. Listen, if you're feeling heavy, if you're feeling overwhelmed because of all that's happening around you, I got some good news for you. Unfortunately, you're not alone. And we are all feeling heavy. We are all looking for tools, and we all can do with a dose of hope. I have a hope ambassador in the building. I'm so excited. She is back. She's one of my favorites, and she's written a new book that's going to help us navigate the world we're living in right now. Let me tell you a little bit about the powerhouse that is Shannan Martin. Shannan Martin is a best-selling author and speaker known for her honest, hope-filled writing about faith, community, and the sacredness of everyday life. I love that so much. She's the author of several books, including The Ministry of Ordinary Places, where I first fell in love with her, Falling Free, Start with Hello, and writes the popular Substack newsletter, The Soup. Shannan works as a cook at a local community kitchen in Goshen, Indiana, where she lives with her husband, a jail chaplain. Come on, these guys are all about the people and their family, and she seeks to practice neighborly love in ordinary ways. Today, we are talking about her newest book, Counterweights, love the subtitle, an essential practice for holding hope in a heavy world. Whew, we need you, girl. Would you please give a huge Canadian welcome to Shannan Martin?
I'm so happy to be here.
Welcome back, sis. It's so
Thank
good to
you.
have you. Oh my goodness. Shannan, I've been tracking with you since I first spoke to you. Gosh, I think it was maybe season 1 or 2 of my show. And I think for those that are just stumbling into this conversation, let's do it in a fun way.
Sure.
If your life was a movie, what would be the title and why?
Oh, what a question. I would say I don't know about the title right off the bat. I'm not especially good at titling things, Cheryl. That's something I've learned in my
What?
I can write, but when it comes to finding a title, it takes me some time. What I can tell you is that my life would be an independent film. It would not be like a feature film. It would not be a blockbuster.
Why do you say
It,
that?
well, I'm a movie person. I like going to the movies, and the movies I tend to gravitate towards are these little kind of obscure indie movies done on a low budget where things aren't always necessarily super polished, and we see the sort of the grit of reality coming through in a way that we don't always see in big Hollywood movies. So yeah, it would just be real life. You would see the messes and the moods and everything that we encounter in a given day.
Wow. I love that. I love that about you. And you know yourself well. That's really, really good. I'm so excited to talk to you about this book. And I feel like it's such a perfect time for it. So let's begin with this title, Counterweights, an essential practice for holding hope in a heavy world. Why counterweights? What was resonating with you about that?
Yeah, so a lot of people have been talking and for a very long time about these ideas of, when life feels challenging, which I think it always does to one degree or another, they'll talk about focusing on joy or making a gratitude list or, counting our blessings. And I don't think there's anything wrong with any of those things. I've done them all at some point or another. Counterweights is different from those other practices or ideas because it requires that we also give our attention to the things that are weighing us down, those things that feel heavy, the things that we're not sure quite how to carry, how to get through, rather than just focusing on joy and, kind of turning away from the things that are difficult in our lives. Counterweights asks us to give sacred attention to the things that are hard, the things that are heavy, and those lighter, more positive things that help to lift us back up. So this is sort of a unique practice in that it is asking us to name all of it, not just the fluffy stuff.
And why did you feel it was the book to write now?
For me, it became a part of survival, of just getting through the challenges of my particular life. I think no matter who we are facing some hurdles. We are looking up close at some real pain. And for some, we have some of these things in common, some of these sort of high level things that feel challenging and difficult. Other things feel really uniquely personal and particular. And so for me, I was navigating some heavy losses. I was navigating some loneliness from some relationships that were breaking down, on top of, the really complex political climate here in the United States. A lot of division, a lot of uncertainty, even some fear, I would say. And then on top of that, just everyday life. It started to feel like all of this was too much, just too much. And rather than sort of tipping over into despair, I knew I had to find a way to stay centered and grounded so that I could keep moving forward. And this idea of counterweights, it's actually a metaphor that I came to all thanks to my dad. His name is Dwight. He lives in Ohio. He is a blue collar, very practical Midwestern guy. And when I was a little girl, he taught me and my siblings the easiest way to carry something really heavy is to carry something equally heavy in the other hand, which sounds sort of counterintuitive. But when we sort of redistribute the weight, carry something heavy in both hands, it does pull us back to center. It keeps us from dragging to one side, and it allows us to kind of create that momentum we need to move forward. So I'm here to say this is a metaphor for our lives. If we think of all the heavy things we are carrying over in this hand, we have this other hand that we can choose to load up with heavy goodness. So we have the things that we cannot control, the things that we never would have asked for, the things that we cannot put down. They are just ours, and we've got to figure it out. But in this other hand, we do have a say, and we can choose to more intentionally fill that other bucket, fill that other hand with heavy goodness. When we do that, I think it helps us to keep moving forward.
Gosh, I love that. I love this conversation, Shannan. And you're right. This message that you're bringing to the world is sort of countercultural, for sure. It's pushing against sort of the mainstream thought, and I wonder. Talk to us about the damage around toxic positivity. This
Yeah.
idea of look on the bright side, and hey guys, when we got this, and
Yeah.
I think there's a real danger there. Like, walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's danger there too. I think we're all wired in one way or the other. So some of us have a hard time tearing our eyes away from the things that are challenging and hard. We have a hard time finding the good. But some others of us have a hard time forcing ourselves to really be honest about the realities we are facing. Especially, for me, as a white woman raised in American evangelical spaces for my entire life, I was really immersed in this idea of positivity that I would see as toxic, positivity that allowed me for decades, for most of my life, up until maybe 10 or 15 years ago, to really ignore a lot of the hard realities happening around me simply because they weren't happening to me.
Right.
And so it allowed me to kind of look away and think, everything is wonderful. My life is great. I'm going to focus on what's good. And I'm not going to allow the negativity of thinking of the things that are challenging. But what that did for me was that it led to a sense of isolation. It led to me understanding that I was doing actual harm in my life and in my communities and with some of my neighbors by my inability to be very honest about the things that were going wrong, the things that are unjust, and even my part in some of those things. And so when we can start to be a little more honest about the realities around us, whether they are happening personally to us or not, I think we owe that to each other. I think we owe it to this human cause to keep an eye on the things that need to be fixed and repaired, because I ultimately think we all have a part to play in that.
I would love, because this sounds, and as they say, it sounds good on paper, right?
Sure.
Give us show us now how this works in practice. I'd
Yeah.
love to know how have you applied it to your life? How has it
hmm
changed you, shifted you? Any of those examples would be great.
Yeah. When I set out to write Counterweights, I wanted to be as honest as I possibly could. In the year or so that I spent writing, what are the things that are weighing me down? And some of those things feel really big, and some of them feel really, really small and maybe not worth mentioning. But these are our lives. This is the one life that I get. And each of us, we only get to do this once. And so I would like to encourage us to get away from the idea that there's always someone suffering more than we are. That is usually true. And yet we know that it's not a competition. We know that suffering is not something that we have to pit against our neighbors. And so I set out to write about the big things and the small things that were hard. And I also wanted to be very, very honest about the small and big things that were filling that other hand, that heavy goodness, the things that were helping to lift me a little further off the ground, the things that were allowing me to keep going. And that's essentially the practice of Counterweights. It's saying, I'm going to name this thing that feels really difficult right now. And I am also going to look around me in my everyday life and
Yeah.
find something that will bring me a spark of joy or remind me of what is beautiful, something that will allow me to remember there's still a lot to love about this life, even in the midst of a world that feels kind of injured and sick. There's still so much to love. I still really love this life. So let me think of an example here that can bring it a little closer to the ground. And this is a very specific example.
Yeah.
One of the things I wrote about, a very difficult and heavy thing, was that my family went through a very painful season of being sort of exiled from our church that we had been a part of for a very long time. And so it's that pretty familiar story of being harmed by your faith space. It's something a lot of us unfortunately can relate to.
Yes.
It overtook our lives in so many ways. It overtook our mental health. It felt like all we were doing was talking about it and meeting about it and crying about it. And, meanwhile, I'm thinking my kids are getting older and this is what they're going to remember about their lives. All of these things were happening in me. And it was dragging us down. We were drowning in some of this. And along the way, something very odd happened with my husband and I, and that we started listening to, this is a polarizing thing to say, but I'm here to be honest. We got very invested in the catalog of Taylor Swift. Right? Like, how do these things come together?
I was not expecting that.
No,
I was not expecting
I
that.
wasn't either. So at a time when we were honestly, and I write about this with my husband's permission, he was doing a lot of the heavy lifting with this really hard situation. We ended up ultimately leaving that church, and it's still really painful. His mental health was fraying. We were all struggling deeply, and now we don't have a church home anymore. On and on it goes. I was sort of, I was familiar with Taylor Swift music. I like all different kinds of music. But my husband sort of started picking up her new album as well, and I would catch him listening to it now and then. We ended up, over the course of our most difficult summer together, going through her entire catalog in order. And the sheer practice of, now we had something a little more lighthearted to talk about when it felt like we were so in the weeds, just spinning this thing in circles. It gave us something else to focus our attention on. It was kind of fun, pretty lighthearted. Our kids were just ashamed of us. I mean, they were like, they thought it was the cringiest thing ever,
Oh,
and we
oh my
just didn't
gosh.
care. And so
Yeah.
that's just an example of like something so small and kind
Yeah.
of weird and trivial that we were able
Mm,
to say, like, okay, we need something light right now. And
yeah.
in our marriage, we need something to focus on, something new to talk about. It was just the diversion that we needed, and it was a major counterweight in a really difficult time for us.
Oh, I love that. That is a story I will remember for a while. That is so, so good. I love this. And, as we're kind of walking through the book, you've got some really big ideas that I'd love to sort of like pull down and work through. You talk about receiving, now, this phrase is interesting to me. You talk about receiving the chaotic abundance
Mm.
of being alive. Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Please unpack that for us.
Growing up in the church, I was always taught that Jesus promised us an abundant life. As a person of faith, that was something that was just kind of, in the air around me. And for most of my life, I thought of the abundant life as sort of like, oh, cool, I get all of the good stuff, right? The health and the wealth and the prosperity and, a lack of suffering and all of these things. As I have gotten older, and more specifically, as I have rooted myself into a very ordinary, beautiful, complex community of people who, for the most part, are struggling in ways I have not struggled. As I have made my home here and learned to live as neighbors with my neighbors, I've really reevaluated what the abundant life is. And I think now that when Jesus promises us the abundant life, he's saying, here it is, you get it all. You get the hard stuff, you get the beautiful stuff, you get the complexity, the nuance, you get the mystery, you get the questions, and even the doubts, and you get the promises, and you get hope, and all of this stuff, and it piles and it piles. That is the abundant, or that is the definition of abundance. And so, in its truest sense, I think abundance is sort of a chaotic thing. It's not linear, and it's not necessarily just, moving upward and to the right, like in this positive trajectory. It's all over the place. It's up and down and sideways and backwards and, two steps forward and one step back. And that is the life that we've been given. And so I think our job as people of faith is to figure out how to carry this chaotic abundance that each of us has been given.
Oh my goodness. Shannon, I could talk to you forever. You're just such a wise soul. It's so good. And I've got a personal question because I want you to help me through this and everyone else listening and watching, depending how you are consuming this show right now. There's this tension that we carry in hard seasons, seasons of grief and when it's just such a dark, dark moment, that there's almost this guilt that we
Yeah.
feel when we have a moment of joy or
Yep.
happiness. I know I feel that. How
Yeah.
can I feel happiness when all of this is going on?
Right.
Talk to us about the tension of that and why do we struggle with that so much?
Yeah, I would say that very tension that you just named, Cheryl, is another reason why I knew that I had to find a way. I had to find a better way. I had to find a practice for helping me personally to carry my own chaotic abundance because there were the days that all I could see was despair, that I just felt like nothing is ever going to get better. People are never going to change. We're never going to figure this out. All of that like oppressive negativity. And then there were the days that you're describing right now where it's like, oh, I just had one of the best Sundays that I can remember. Or I just had so much fun sitting around yapping with my friends late into the night. Or, just moments of beauty, moments where my soul would feel so light. And in the next split second was this voice kind of outside of myself saying, don't you know the world is burning down, Shannon? Like we have, and sometimes actual
Yes.
people will tell us that. Actual people will say, what are you talking about? You went
Yes.
to a thrift store and bought a new sweater that you love. Don't you know the world is burning down? The reality is we can carry two things at the same time, right? We
Yeah.
can carry the weight and we can carry the counterweight. Two things can be true at the same time. It's something that's really challenging for all of us to wrap our brains around, myself included. But to just hold that reality that we are whole people, we are
Mm.
complex individuals, and we get it all. And there are moments where the heaviness feels unbearable, but we are also allowed to really enjoy and feel the blessing of the moments where life just feels good. I
Mm.
cannot get over the fact, my husband, as you mentioned, is a chaplain of our county jail. We are surrounded by, and our lives are very entangled beautifully with people who are incarcerated right now or who have previously been incarcerated. And we
Right.
learn so much from them. And one of the things that I learned profoundly from these neighbors all the time is the reminder of we only get to do this once. We have one life,
Yep.
and
Yep.
we can choose to be tangled up in outrage and despair, or we can choose to be in la la land and ignoring the plight of so many people around us, or we can just say, "This is my life. Nobody can love it for me. So I am going to do whatever I can today to remind
Yeah.
myself what is good, what is true, what is beautiful, what is hopeful, so that I
Come
can
on.
keep moving towards the hope that we know that hope is here. We know that
Yeah.
that hope is here. And so we just keep moving towards it. I want all of us to find a way to remember that we're allowed to keep loving our lives even when things feel really hard.
Mm. Thank you for that, Shannon. Oh man, I needed that personally as someone that's just sort of having things not go so great in my internal sort of
Mhm.
tighter world, and then watching, as you say, the world on fire, literally,
Yeah.
and then feeling a guilt around moments of joy.
Yeah.
It's so good that this book is giving us permission on
Mhm.
how to navigate all of this properly. And I wonder if you've got a word for someone who is listening that is feeling really overwhelmed,
Yeah.
just without hope. What would you
Mhm.
say to them?
I think that's most of us, honestly. I think most of us are feeling pretty overwhelmed right now. And like I said before, the details might be a little different. A lot of them are probably going to be similar. My word is that we can only sort of counterbalance what we're willing to weigh in the first place. So my simple encouragement for all of us is to begin to name both the weights and the counterweights. Name them out loud, name them in prayer, name them to a friend, get a notebook and write them down. I spend a lot of time writing them down because just getting it out, especially those heavy weights, writing those things down. And I don't get, I'm an author, I'm a word person, but I don't get
Mm,
real flowery or time consuming. Half the time I can't even read my handwriting when I go back to look at it. The point is to just get it out, name it. Name that weight. I do it at the end of every night before I go to bed. I jot down a few of the weights that I'm feeling,
wow.
and I jot
Wow.
down a few of the counterweights that have helped to lift me up during the past 24 hours. A lot of times they're very, very small. One of them
Mm,
recently was my 17-year-old son hugged me, and I didn't let go of that hug until he did. And it was a long hug, longer than I normally get, but that was a big, big counterweight for me. Sometimes it comes from my work in the kitchen where I get to cook food and make lunch for my neighbors, just something small, an interaction that happens, a delicious meal that I get to eat, a sunrise that I happen to catch, a quiet evening where I just get to be on the couch with my blanket and my book or my show or
yeah.
whatever it is. I mean,
Yeah.
all of these things build into our life. And so if you are feeling overwhelmed, and I am sure you are, take a moment to name them. There's real power in just naming the thing, looking it in the eye, and getting it down on paper, getting it out into the air, so that you can then look around you in your ordinary, everyday, basic life and sort of identify what is something right now that might lift me up a little bit. Do I need to go to bed? Do I need to go take a really hot shower? Do I need to be with friends? Do I need to be alone? I mean, these are our counterweights and they're always happening. We just have to be more intentional about finding them and naming them.
So good. I could talk to you forever. And as we're kind of winding down here, again, guys, we're speaking about Shannan Martin's incredible new book called Counterweights, an essential practice for holding hope in a heavy world. I wonder what's your hope for the book as it's getting ready, it's sort of like a
Yeah.
baby to go out into the world. How do you want it to land? How do you want us to work through it? You must have a sort of an
Yeah.
ultimate dream. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. My hope is that this book will find the people who need it the most. I know as an author, we're never supposed to say this book is for everybody. That we're not allowed to say that. And it's probably true. But this is my fourth book that I've written. This book, I really believe, has something for everybody. And I really do believe that it can offer help to anyone who reads it. So I hear from people every single day in my regular life, in person and on the internet, that they're feeling that life is too much. They're not sure how to keep going. This book will give you a really practical tool for carrying everything that you've been asked to carry. And so I'm really excited for it to kind of break out into the world because I know it's going to help people. I know that it helped me. I know that this is a practice that is a part of my everyday life. And I know that this word counterweights, it almost gives us a visual image to hold on to. Like we picture a scale and we can understand like things are heavy. And if we add things to this other side, it lifts us up a little bit. I think that's been helpful because I'm already finding before the book is even out that people in my actual life, when I run into people in town or whatever, will say, such and such happened, it was a counterweight. People are already using that word. And so that's exciting to me because it tells me it's sticking and it's going to actually help us. So yes, I'm so excited. I've been working on this book for a long time. It is the book of my heart. It is the most Shannon-y thing I've ever written.
I love it.
It's quirky and it's heavy. I write about some really hard things and I write about a lot of joy. And so I'm just excited for my words to actually be read by people.
Shannan, I know that your life is a big one with lots of highs, lots of lows. We've talked about some of those over the past couple of shows that you've been on. And I always say that storms are our greatest teachers. The mountaintop stuff and all the spotlight, I know you're getting into a big press tour, all that sort of front of audience stuff is wonderful. But it's the valley. It's the back against the wall stuff that develops our character, strengthens our faith, recalibrates us about what really matters and what doesn't. I would love to know, with the storms that you've been facing lately, what are you learning, Shannan? What are you learning about God?
Yeah.
What are you learning about Shannan?
Yeah.
And maybe just the third one, what are you learning about like community and like the role of community in your life?
Oh man. I could talk about that last one, especially for a really long time. Yeah, I really like the framing of that question in the sense of what are the storms that we are facing? Because we're always facing something. We're always facing a storm. I think of the things that I'm carrying right now, and one that might be a little more relatable to people, but it's been really challenging for me. I am facing an empty nest. And it is wild. It is wild to think of. We just moved my daughter to Atlanta, 600 miles away. She's 19. We just did that over the weekend. So we just have one kiddo here in the house with us. He's a junior in high school, and it's all going so fast. And I'm wrestling with what to do and how to be and how to think about this. And I'm so excited for my kids. And I sometimes have regret over, certain aspects of mothering and, all the things that we carry. So that's one of the storms. And it's probably not the biggest storm, but it's something that I'm sitting with every day. And as I navigate that, I am learning about myself, which I love that you asked, what am I learning about myself? If we don't do the work of knowing ourselves, we can't figure out even what our counterweights might be. We've got to do that work of understanding who we are. I am learning that I can be gracious to myself. I'm learning that we are all doing our best. I'm learning that I can have hope for what the future holds for me, that this is not the end. This is a new kind of beginning. And, your question about community comes right into this thought for me, and that my work with the community around me is increasingly important, and now I'm going to have more space for that now. So all
Mm.
I think to the extent that we can help carry each other's burdens, that we can kind of help carry these buckets together, the heavy hard buckets and the buckets filled with heavy goodness, that's the ideal. So I am looking forward to seeing what comes next with my community. I'm just really excited for that. And when I can
Mm.
focus on that excitement, that helps to counterweight some of that
Yeah.
sadness.
Yeah. And how have all of those hard seasons shaped your view of God?
Yeah. There's a quote by one of my favorite authors, Father Gregory Boyle. He says, "How much greater is the God we have than the one we think we have?" And I read
Oh,
it. I read it 15 years ago, and I was like, "Wait, what?"
wow.
And I think about it all the time because what I love about it is it reminds us that there is some mystery involved. And I need that. I like
Yeah.
knowing that it's not up to me to come to some place of certainty or sureness or feeling like I've got everything figured out. I don't have God figured out. What I do know is that I feel God's nearness every day. I see evidence of God's renewal every day, and the people around me who are struggling to move forward in creation. I'm a big fan of looking for evidence of God in the sky and in my neighborhood, and in what's growing in my garden. I love this idea that God is more expansive and more loving than we could even imagine. That is what I continue to learn.
Oh, I love that. Oh my goodness. Shannon, you just touched my heart with those words. So thankful for you. Well, listen, as we wind down, I always love to end with this sort of like surprise question. So surprise, here we go. But I feel like this is such a great conversation for this question. And, sort of setting your book, Counterweights, I want to shout it out again, an essential practice for holding hope in a heavy world. As the backdrop of this, finish this sentence. Shannon, it's time for what? It's time for what?
It's time for filling the other bucket with as many good things as we are able to find in the nitty gritty, in the long, boring hours, in the grief, and in the celebration of our one precious life. Good things are happening all around us. Beauty is surrounding us if we will slow down enough to notice it and hold it in our hands and let it matter to us. So it is the time to fill that bucket.
Gosh, it is the time to fill that bucket. And I have to flip it on you because we need it. What is it not time for?
It is not a time to close our eyes to the harsh realities so many people are facing. Some of us are facing harsh realities. It's not a time to turn away from that. And it's also not a time to forget who we are as neighbors, as the kingdom of God. That we are asked to do the challenging work of finding our way through and finding our way through together. So yeah, it's not time for us to try to go it alone, and it's not time for us to turn away from the heaviness, but to recognize that if we can be honest about the heavy things, we can also more easily find those things that help keep us going.
So, Shannan, how do we track with you? Tell us about any upcoming events or resources, websites, all the things.
Yeah, I'd love to. I am doing my first ever book tour. I've never done a little tour for a book, so I'm very excited about that. I'm doing a big hometown book launch event here in Goshen with Jen Hatmaker. She's coming to be in conversation with me, and I'm so thrilled
Nice.
for that. But I'm getting to several places across the United States with some really special friends. You can find all of that information and anything having to do with counterweights or my previous work on my website, shannonmartin.com. And you can follow my Substack there. You can also find me on Instagram and Threads. I'm in both places most days, and I am at Shannan Writes.
Gosh. Shannan, thank you so much. Once again, Shannan Martin, incredible author. Get to know all of her books, guys. Ministry of the Ordinary Places, Falling Free, Start with Hello, and now her brand new book, Counterweights, an essential practice for holding hope in a heavy world. And if you're a Substack fan, please check out The Soup. It's an extremely popular newsletter. Obviously, I mean, it's Shannan Martin. Let's go. Shannan, thank you so much for being on the path. Hopefully you come back again, will you?
I hope so. I can't wait.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to On the Path with Cheryl Nembhard, brought to you by Compassion Canada.